Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And as the SNP lurches from crisis to crisis, and I'm sitting doing these reports, little flashes come up at the bottom of the screen saying breaking news. And as I was making the last video, a little flash came up, and indeed it was breaking news. And it is that the ferry fiasco on the islands, as caused indirectly by the SNP's transport policies, has now meant that there are ferries, these ferries which would bring across supplies and bring people across, no longer running. They are absolutely cut off from the mainland. Things are running low. Tourism is dying. All sorts of problems. And rather than sorting it out themselves, the SNP have had to rely on something that must be a complete anathema to them. They've had to rely on the United Kingdom. Specifically, they've had to get the British military involved. And remember that if they were independent, they wouldn't have a navy. But they've had to get the British military involved to the rescue for Highland communities that have been cut off by these ferry problems, because they are completely incapable of doing it themselves. How very embarrassing for the SNP in general. And of course, yet another embarrassment, a personal embarrassment for Humza Yousaf, who of course was the Transport Minister and was closely involved with all this ferry fiasco. Why on earth does anyone trust him to do anything? Well, here's another example of another fail by Captain Fail himself. But to have to go and rely on the rest of the United Kingdom's military to dig you out of a massive, massive hole of your own making is utterly shameful. It is embarrassing, and it is something that they will not be able to live down, I think, for many a long time. FMQs this week will be an absolute delight. So I will certainly be watching that. And I hope you do too, because then when we talk about it later, you'll have a reference point. But it is absolutely astounding that they have felt necessary to call in the military. So we'll have a look at this article. I mean, Jesus Christ, guys, sort your lives out. Anyway, here we go. So, British military to the rescue for Highland communities stranded by the SNP's ferry fiasco. The Ministry of Defence is preparing to step in to provide a replacement service for the stricken Corran ferry, which threatens to wreck livelihoods and tourism amongst the Highlands. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is set to provide a replacement ferry service for islanders stranded by the ferry crisis caused by the SNP's failure to replace ageing vessels. It's yet another fail in their long continuing list of fails. Humza Yousaf is personally responsible for this. There's no getting away with it. The man is personally responsible for the ferries. He has caused this with his inability to do his job. So we all know where the blame lies. And so he's had to rely on the one thing he dare not rely on, the thing that he's trying to pull himself and his country away from, the rest of Britain. So in a humiliating move for the nationalists, and one that will forestall any claims of a power grab, it comes after a direct and desperate plea from the SNP's former Westminster leader, Ian Blackford. Ian Blackford himself begged for this. This is the man that is so anti-rabidly the United Kingdom, and he had to beg to get this done. This is the ultimate humiliation of Ian Blackford and of the SNP, and it is delicious. How do you like them apples, Blackford? Well, not that he eats too many apples, of course. He's too busy shoving Greg's pies in his mouth. But he begged military chiefs to provide a short-term solution to the collapse of part of the ferry network after vessels were taken in for repairs lasting at least 6 weeks. He is begging for help because he cannot rely on his own party to do the proper thing and correct and fix and maintain a ferry service to these islanders. I just love the idea of him standing there with the Ministry of Defence and the Defence Minister, the Tory Defence Minister, and he's begging him to help. Begging him because he knows his party cannot and is incapable of doing anything. The sensational new development was revealed on Saturday by The Times, which said that Mr Blackford had appealed directly to Ben Wallace to find a replacement for the Corran ferry. Highland Council run services across Loch Linnhe and between the Ardnamurchan Peninsula and Corran have been cancelled for weeks as the two vessels are repaired. I will say I've been to Ardnamurchan and it's a long way to get anywhere. You go past the railway, the Harry Potter railway bridge, and you keep going out. Kinlochleven or something. I can't remember. Kintilloch, top of my brain. But it's only about 30 miles from this main road to the end, and you go and see these stacks. It's about 30 miles, but it takes you about 3 hours, 4 hours to get there, even when the roads are empty, because the roads are like that wide. It really is remote. But it's a beautiful area, so ever you get a chance. And when you zoom out on the map, it's total tangent, but when you zoom out on Google Maps and you'll see this, it looks like a turtle's head coming out, and then there's a big eye. But that actually is a volcano. It's an extinct volcano. But when you're there, you can just see this massive volcano. It is really impressive. So if you ever do get the chance to get up there, do it. It is a wonderful place. Anyway, back to the story. I just can't help because I just love that area of the world. A reduced service has been running since January, while the route's main ferry, the MV Curran, is currently under maintenance. MV Maid of Glencool, a smaller, older ferry, had been covering the 5-minute crossing until it broke down last Friday. The Ministry of Defence is said to be keen to intervene and is seeking to identify a suitable replacement vessel ahead of a formal request for aid from the Council and the Scottish Government. And I want to be in that room when that request is made. Such requests are usually made in response to large-scale emergencies such as flooding disasters or the coronavirus pandemic, and the military only agrees to get involved when a public body lacks the capability to fulfil a task. Indeed, it's very difficult to get the army or any branch of the military to do something like that, simply because of the rules of engagement that they have and their resources and things like that. So it is something that it tends to be sort of the more severe things, and it has to be done at a governmental level. You can't just phone up the army and say, come and help. It doesn't work like that. I speak as someone who has served. Anyway, the MP for Ross, Skye and Lochaber told The Times, I will continue to work with all the agencies for a short-term solution to get the service moving until the MV Corran returns, and also to work to make sure the long-term needs of the population are met. The long-term needs of the population is a replacement ferry that should have been in service 6 years ago and is still nowhere near serviceably ready. What is wrong with these people? Why can they not just go along to a ferry shop and buy a ferry? It's not hard. The move will humiliate the SNP administration again, who were forced to rely on soldiers to drive ambulances during the pandemic and also required military assistance in the wake of Storm Arwen in 2021. And this is the problem. If Scotland goes independent, it won't have the British military to help it. It'll have a small force of its own, perhaps. But all the equipment was bought from Westminster, so all the equipment would have to come back. They certainly won't have a navy, and they won't have an air force. So I don't know what they're going to do should events like this happen and they were independent. They would have to go begging of their neighbours, and I'm sure the neighbours would help, but there would be a significant charge, I feel. Is that what the people of Scotland want? It's not what the people on the islands want. I bet the people on the islands are very, very glad that the British military is going to step in and save them. Certainly, they'll probably lose a lot of votes to the SNP if that has to be the case. Although the Loch Linnhe service is not provided by Calmac, the West Coast operator is also mired in chaos due to the breakdowns and repairs in its ageing fleet and the failure to provide replacements. Highland Council announced on Wednesday that it was creating 2 alternative foot passenger routes and improved road safety for vehicles using the 42-mile detour along the A861, which adds more than an hour to the journey. It is a big loop, but that's what you get. It is said that the repair of the MV Corran, which has run the route since 2001, was ahead of schedule, but I suspect that is a lie. Although it is expected to remain out of service for up to 2 more months. People living in Fort William, Ardgour, Sunart, Ardnamurchan, Moidart, Morar, Morven and the Isle of Mull, as well as tourists, are the main users of the service, and the ferry is the busiest single vessel route in Scotland, carrying more than 250,000 cars a year. It's a very, very important route. It's a very important ferry. It's something that should have been primarily dealt with 6 to 10 years ago. And then we are 15 years into the SNP government. So you have to ask, why have they failed? This is not down to Westminster. This is not down to the previous administration. This is all the SNP, and particularly Humza Yousaf. So I feel sorry for the people on the island, but at least when the military step in, they'll be able to get off the island and bring in provisions and tourists that will keep their economy going. And I will finish there and come up, and we will round off this video. So there you are, another humiliating defeat for the SNP, another failure. Captain Fail fails again. He's failed as the Transport Secretary and as leader, all on the same day. It's fantastic. So there's another fail for them. In order to save them, they've had to go on bended knee to Westminster to get the Ministry of Defence to help them and bail them out. This is the same sort of Westminster that they so loathe and cannot abide, and yet there they are, like I say, subsuming themselves, humiliating themselves, abasing themselves at the feet of the Defence Secretary, hoping beyond hope that the British Navy will come in, release a ferry or something, and get these people to sort out their ferry service. So it's totally embarrassing for them, and I would love to see Tubby Blackford, bended knee, kissing the ring, as it were, trying to get help from those he most totally loathes, and it must be heartbreaking for him. He must have gone home a broken, truly broken man. It's great, isn't it? It's absolutely. It just shows them up for not only being stupid and inept and totally incapable of doing anything correctly, but it shows them up as the absolute hypocrites they are, that they have to go to what they perceive as the enemy to sort out their problems. Marvellous. Anyway, I do hope that the military step in quite quickly. I hope it's all sorted, and I hope the people living on the island don't have to worry about like supplies reaching them, or that now that particularly the start of the tourist season is coming, that they're not sort of left in limbo and losing a lot of money because they do need the trade. So anyway, I'll end it there. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please do hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and do leave a like and a comment. They're particularly helpful for the algorithm. Also, share the video. But until next time, stay safe, stay well, take a ferry, not the 42-mile route, and goodbye.